Day of the Dragon King. Magic Tree House, book number 14. Prologue. One summer day in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania, a mysterious tree house appeared in the woods. 8-year-old Jack and his 7-year-old sister Annie climbed into the tree house. They found that it was filled with books. Jack and Annie soon discovered that the tree house was magic. It could take them to the places in the books. All they had to do was point to a picture and wish to go there. Along the way, they discovered that the tree house belongs to Morgan Le Fay. Morgan is a magical librarian from the time of King Arthur. She travels through time and space gathering books. In Magic Tree House number 12, Polar Bears Past Bedtime, Jack and Annie solved the last 4 ancient riddles and became master librarians. To help them in their future tasks, Morgan gave Jack and Annie secret library cards with the letters M.L. on them. Jack and Annie's first 4 missions as master librarians are to save stories from ancient libraries. When their first adventure ended, Magic Tree House number 13, Vacation Under the Volcano, Morgan asked them to return to the treehouse in 2 weeks to go to China and save another story. Now the 2 weeks are over. Chapter 1, The Bamboo Book. Annie peeked into Jack's room. Ready to go to China? She asked. Jack took a deep breath. Sure, he answered. Bring your secret library card, said Annie. I have mine in my pocket. Yup, said Jack. He opened his top dresser drawer and took out a thin wooden card. The letters M.L. on it shimmered in the light. Jack dropped the card into his backpack. Then he threw in his notebook and pencil. Let's go, said Annie. Jack pulled on his pack and followed her. What are we in for today? He wondered. Bye, Mom, said Annie as they passed their mom in the kitchen. Where are you going? She asked. China, said Annie. Great, said their mom. She winked at them. Have fun. Fun, thought Jack. He was afraid that fun wasn't quite the right word. Just wish us luck, he said as he and Annie headed out the front door. Good luck, their mother called. If only she knew we weren't pretending, Jack whispered to Annie. Yeah, said Annie, grinning. Outside, the sun shone brightly. Birds sang, crickets chirped. Jack and Annie walked up their street toward the Frog Creek woods. I wonder if the weather will be this nice in China, said Annie. I don't know. Remember, Morgan said this would be a very scary adventure, said Morgan. They're always scary, said Annie. But we always meet animals who help us, or people. True, said Jack. I bet we meet someone great today, said Annie. Jack smiled. He was starting to feel excited now instead of scared. Let's hurry, he said. They ran into the Frog Creek woods. They slipped between the tall trees until they came to a huge oak. Hello, came a soft voice they knew well. They looked up. Morgan was peering down from the magic tree house. Ready for your next mission as master librarians? She asked. Yes, said Jack and Annie. They grabbed the rope ladder and started up. Are we still going to China? Asked Annie when they had climbed into the tree house. Indeed, said Morgan. You are going to ancient China. Here's the title of the story you must find. She held up a long, thin strip of wood. It looked like a ruler, except it had changed writing on it instead of numbers. Long ago, the Chinese discovered how to make paper. It was one of the world's most important discoveries, said Morgan. But you are going to a time earlier than that, to a time when books are written on bamboo strips like this one. Wow, said Annie, pointing the figures on the bamboo. So this is Chinese writing? Yes, said Morgan. Just as we have letters, Chinese writing is made up of many characters. Each one stands for a different thing or idea. These characters are the title of an ancient Chinese legend. You must find the first writing of the legend before the Imperial Library is destroyed. Hurry, let's go, said Annie. Wait, we need our research book, said Jack. Yes, you do, said Morgan. From the folds of her robe, she pulled out a book. On the cover was the title, The Time of the First Emperor. Morgan handed the book to Jack. This research book will guide you, she said. But remember, in your darkest hour, only the old legends can save you. But we have to find it first, said Annie. Exactly, said Morgan. She handed Jack the bamboo chip, and he slipped it into his pack. Jack pushed his glasses into place, then pointed at the cover of their research book. I wish we could go there, he said. The wind started to blow. The chia started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2. The Cowherd. Oh, wow, Annie said. These clothes feel so soft. And look, I have a pocket for my secret library card. Jack opened his eyes. Their clothes had magically changed. They no longer wore jeans, t-shirts, and sneakers. Instead, they had on baggy pants, loose shirts, straw shoes, and round hats. Annie's shirt had a pocket in it. Jack saw that his backpack had become a rough cloth sack. Inside were his research book, his notebook, his library card, and the bamboo chip. Cows, said Annie, looking out the window. Jack looked out too. The tree house had landed in a lone tree in a sunny field. Cows grazed, and a young man stood watching over them. At the edge of the field was a farmhouse. Beyond the house was a walled city. It looked so peaceful, said Annie. You can never be sure, said Jack. Remember, Pompeii looked peaceful before the volcano went off. Oh, yeah, said Annie. Let's see what the book says, said Jack. He reached in the sack and pulled out the china book. He opened it and read aloud. Over 2,000 years ago, China was ruled by its first emperor. Because he chose the dragon to be a symbol, he was called the Dragon King. In China, dragons are seen as brave and powerful creatures. Dragon King? That sounds a little scary, said Jack. I like his outfit, said Annie. Next to the writing was a picture. It showed a man wearing a rich, flowing robe with wide sleeves. He also wore a tall hat with beads hanging from it. Jack pulled out his notebook and wrote, First Emperor called Dragon King. The book we need must be in the Dragon King's library, said Annie. I bet his palace is in that city. Jack looked up. Right, he said, and that's how to get there. He pointed across the field to a dirt road that led into the walled city. Good plan, said Annie. She climbed out of the tree house and started down the rope ladder. Jack threw the china book and his notebook into his sack. He slung the sack over his shoulder and followed Annie. When they reached the ground, they started through the field. Look, that guy's waving at us, said Annie. The man tending the cows was shouting and waving. He started running toward them. Uh-oh, what's he want? Said Jack. A moment later, the man stood in their path. He was young and handsome with a kind face. Can you do me a favor? He asked. I would be most grateful. Of course, said Annie. Give a message to the silk weaver. You will see her at the farmhouse, said the young man. Tell her to meet me here at twilight. Sure, no problem, said Annie. The young man smiled. Thank you, he said. Then he started to leave. Wait, excuse me, said Jack. Do you know where we can find the Imperial Library? A look of horror crossed the man's kind face. Why? He whispered. Oh, I just wondered, said Jack. The young man shook his head. Beware of the Dragon King, he said. Whatever you do, beware. Then he turned and ran back to his cows. Oh, man, whispered Jack. Now we know one thing for sure. What? Asked Annie. This place is not as peaceful as it seems, Jack said. Chapter 3. The Silk Weaver. Jack and Annie kept walking across the pasture toward the road. Annie stopped when they neared the farmhouse. We have to find the silk weaver and give her the message, she said. Let's do that on our way back, said Jack. I'm worried about finding the Imperial Library. What if we don't have time? Said Annie. We promised, and he was so nice. Jack sighed. Okay, he said, but let's find her fast, and remember to keep your head down so no one will notice us. Jack and Annie bowed their heads as they headed toward the house. As they got closer, Jack peeked out from under his hat. An ox pulled a cart filled with hay. Men hoed the ground. Women pushed wheelbarrows piled high with grain. There, said Annie. She pointed to an open porch where a young woman was weaving cloth in a loom. That must be her. Annie ran to the silk weaver. Jack looked around to see if anyone was watching. Luckily, other farm workers seemed too busy to notice anything. Still looking around carefully, Jack walked toward the porch. Annie was already talking to the silk weaver. What did he say? The young woman asked. Her voice was soft but strong. Her dark eyes glowed with happiness. He said you should meet him in the field at twilight, said Annie. He's so handsome. Yes, he is. The silk weaver gave Annie a shy smile. Then she reached down to the basket near her loom and picked up a ball of yellow thread. It is very brave of you to bring the message, she said. Please accept the silk thread as my thank you. She handed Annie the ball of silk. It's beautiful, said Annie. Feel. She handed it to Jack. The thread was smooth and soft. How do you make silk? Said Jack. It is made from the cocoons of silkworms, said the weaver. Really? Worms? That's neat, said Jack. Let me write that down. He reached into a sack. Please don't, said the silk weaver. The making of silk is China's most valuable secret. Anyone who steals the secret will be arrested. The Dragon King will have him put to death. Oops, said Jack. He dropped the ball of silk into his sack. I think you must leave quickly, whispered the silk weaver. You have been seen. Jack looked over his shoulder. A man was pointing at them. Let's go, he said. Bye, said Annie. Good luck on your date. Thank you, the silk weaver said. Come on, said Jack. They hurried away from the silk weaver. Stop, someone shouted. Run, said Annie. Chapter 4. The Great Wall. Jack and Annie ran around the farmhouse. At the back was an ox cart filled with bags of grain. There was no one in sight. The shouting behind them got louder. Jack and Annie looked at each other, then dived into the back of the wooden cart. They buried themselves in the middle of the bags of grain. Jack's heart pounded as the shouts came closer. He held his breath and waited for the people to leave. Suddenly the cart lurched forward. Someone was driving them away. Jack and Annie peeked over the bags. Jack saw the back of the driver. He was calmly steering the ox cart over the dirt road. They were on their way to the walled city. Jack and Annie ducked down again. This is great, whispered Annie. All we have to do is jump out when we get to the city. Yup, said Jack softly. Then we'll find the Imperial Library, find the book, and get back to the magic she house. No problem, whispered Annie. Whoa! The cart slowly came to a halt. Jack held his breath. He heard voices and the heavy champing of feet. Lots of feet. He and Annie peeked out. Oh, man, he whispered. A long line of men was crossing the road in front of the cart. They carried axes, shovels, and hoes. Guards marched alongside them. Let's find out what's happening, said Jack. He reached into his sack and pulled out the china book. Pushing his glasses into place, he found a picture of the workers. He read, The Dragon King forced many of his subjects to start building a wall to protect China from invaders. Later, emperors made the wall even longer. Finally, it stretched 3,700 miles across China's border. The Great Wall of China is the longest structure ever built. Wow, the Great Wall of China, said Jack. I've heard of that, said Annie. Who hasn't, said Jack. Those guys are going to work on it right now. Just then, someone grabbed Jack and Annie. They looked up. It was the driver of the cart. Who are you? He asked angrily. Jack didn't know what to say. The man's gaze fell on the open book in Jack's hands. His mouth dropped open. He let go of Jack and Annie. Slowly, he reached out and touched the book. He looked back at Jack and Annie with wide eyes. What is this? He said. Chapter 5. The Scholar. It's a book from our country, said Jack. Your books are made of bamboo, but ours are made of paper. Actually, your country invented paper, but later, in the future. The man looked confused. Never mind, said Annie. It's for reading. It's for learning about faraway places. The man stared at them. Tears filled his eyes. What's wrong? Annie asked softly. I love reading and learning, he said. So do I, said Jack. The man smiled. You don't understand. I am dressed as a farmer, he said, but in truth I am a scholar. What's a scholar? Said Annie. We are great readers, learners, and writers, he said. We have long been the most honored citizens in China. The scholar's smile faded. But now scholars are in danger, he said, and many of us have gone into hiding. Why? Said Jack. The Dragon King is afraid of the power of our books and learning, said the scholar. He wants people to think only what he wants them to think. Any day he may order the burning of the books. Annie gasped. Does that mean what I think it means? Said Jack. The scholar nodded. All the books in the Imperial Library will be burned, he said. That's rotten, said Annie. Indeed it is, the scholar said quietly. Listen, we have a mission to get a book from that library, said Jack. Who are you? Asked the scholar. Show him, said Annie. She reached into her skirt pocket as Jack reached into his sack. They brought out the secret library cards. The letters shimmered in the sunlight. The scholar's mouth dropped open again. You are master librarians, he said. I have never met one so honored who were so young. He bowed to show his respect. Thank you, said Jack and Annie. They bowed back to him. How can I help you? Asked the scholar. We need to go to the Imperial Library and find this book, said Jack. He held out Morgan's bamboo strip to the scholar. We will go to the Imperial Library, said the scholar. As for the story, I know it well. It is a true one, written not long ago. But I warn you, we will be in great danger. We know, said Annie. The scholar smiled. I am happy to be doing something I believe in again, said the scholar. Let us go. They all climbed into the front of the cart. The long line of wall builders was marching in the distance. As the oxen started forward, the scholar turned to Jack and Annie. Where are you from? He asked. Frog Creek, Pennsylvania, said Annie. I have never heard of it, said the scholar. Do they have a library there? Oh, sure, there's a library in every town, said Jack. In fact, there are probably thousands of libraries in our country. And millions of books, said Annie, and no one burns them. Right, said Jack. Everyone gets to go to school to learn to read them. The scholar stared at him and shook his head. It sounds like paradise, he said.